These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Reckless speculation. Reckless speculation.
Trade talk.
Juicy rumors.
Tried to stay in shape, so I never had to get back in shape, as far as, what I can do, in the gyms around me and, things that I can do on my own. But at the end of the day, it's just staying in that routine. Once you have that routine, you know how to get back into it and you know how to, ramp it up when you need to. I'm taking pride in, trying to preach that to some of the younger guys. As soon as you can get that routine and, hiring a chef or whatever it may be to just, start making your first year easy as possible. Make it a flowing season, not something that has bumps and grinds when it doesn't have to. So just staying in shape, eating well, and, training and trying to continue to stay on that rhythm.
D'Angelo Russell.
Don't you have a chef?
If you guys made $30 million a year, where would personal chef rank on the first things you would do? Because it's number one for me.
It's in the top 5. I don't know if it's in my top 3, though. I think it rounds out my top 5. I want a personal driver.
Really?
I would love a personal driver.
But so Uber, you want Uber?
Yeah, but that's different. Like he's my guy. Like his job is to personally drive me. And
Uber
we have a good
Black though.
relationship.
Uber Black. It's like a Lincoln that pulls up and
like
they have bottles of water. Yeah.
Yep.
Personal chef. So if you had one though, would you hire the personal chef to actually keep you in shape or just to cook really good food?
Oh, good food.
Because if you're
a personal trainer, those are 2 different things.
Athlete though, you get the personal chef because that chef is going to cook you delicious but heart healthy at every turn meals.
Yeah.
So, but the question becomes, if you were that rich, would you do that or just say, you know what, a little bit of cake tonight?
It depends. Are you rich and trying to be an NBA player playing at his peak?
No, we're not trying to be NBA players. We'd just be rich.
Just cook me 9 waffles every morning.
Exactly right. Some crepes, maybe.
A fresh blueberry muffin every day.
A pipe and a crepe.
Yeah.
Smoking a pancake. I think if I were an NBA player for sure, I would just want like super healthy, keto meals, right?
That's not you though.
But if it was just me, I would want like 80% healthy meals and then 20% the best cheat meals ever. So Friday night, Saturday night, and then like Sunday brunch. I just want like crazy cheat meals from my personal chef. That's what I would say.
So cheat breakfast, lunch, dinner, or all 3?
No, I'm saying I would eat healthy for like 5 days and then cheat
on your
Friday
cheat days, which meal, if you had one, would you cheat with the most? Breakfast? Because you can make a breakfast incredibly unhealthy.
Yeah, but then I'm napping all day.
Yep.
For me, I'm cheating on Friday night, I'm cheating on Saturday night, and then I'm cheating on brunch Sunday because like it's a lazy day anyway.
That's what I was
watching the Vikings.
Good breakfast day to cheat.
Oh yeah,
for sure. I'm on the couch watching the Vikings and then we
falling asleep during the Jaguars game.
So anyhow, this is Reckless Speculation Thursday. We do this every single week where we just take your trade ideas, listeners, and if you're watching on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/ScoreNorthMN, and we find our own that are circulating around the internet. So you just heard a soundbite there from D'Angelo Russell, one of the 2 main Timberwolves stars, or will he be? Or will he still be one of the main Timberwolves stars if John Hollinger gets reckless speculation? All right. Grain of salt here, okay? Mm-hmm. But John Hollinger from The Athletic has an excerpt in an article that's entitled James Harden Trade Possibilities. If not the Sixers or the Nets, where else? Now, today we've seen apparently James Harden, who's been just like updating his who do I want to be traded to list. He showed up to Houston yesterday, so he's at least like showing up.
And he's
for his
driving
job.
this list, right?
Apparently, he's the one that's keeps adding to this
like
list.
He's basically like, I'd go there.
At first,
I'd go to the Bucks.
Yep. At first, it was the Nets, and then it was like, I'd play for the Sixers too.
Yep.
It's great.
And today it's the Bucks and somebody else.
The Heat.
Yeah, it's fantastic, but it's him. It's like no one's saying we want you.
And of course, all of these. We're like 2 weeks before the regular season starts, and all of these trades would involve a complete overhaul of offenses, and you'd have to find a way in all these cases to trade like another star player. For
1 second, like Eric Spoelstra, who's got a system down pat, you think that he's like James Harden? Oh yeah, let's take him on right before the season starts.
I think James Harden is one of the greatest scorers of all time, and so I think if he's got your name on a list, I think you have to at least entertain the idea and see what you can do. I don't know how James Harden and Jimmy Butler coexist in the same pantheon.
Right.
So all of these are sort of fantasy trade ideas, but that's what the NBA has turned into, like your fantasy trade ideas that you kick around 5 beers deep with your friends. Like right up from the John Hollinger.
Mm-hmm.
If it's an off-the-wall destination you seek, then come here, Minnesota.
Reckless speculation.
Sending James Harden to the Timberwolves would reunite him with his former front office mates in Houston, Gerson Rosas and Sachin Gupta. Now, quick side note, James Harden, it sounds like he thinks, according to reports, that the Houston culture has turned into a dumpster fire. And who knows if he thinks that Gerson, who was part of that for like 10 years, was part of it or not. We don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to.
He probably liked Morey, right?
Well, if he wants to go to the Sixers,
so he probably liked that's probably his guy, Daryl Morey.
And Morey and Gerson were close, and so I would assume that he likes both of those guys.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll just assume that. The Timberwolves are set up to play Harden's preferred style with an ideal pick and pop partner in Karl-Anthony Towns. And a lot of role players on the team who don't really need the ball and aren't good enough to demand the ball anyway. Just a bunch of 3-and-D wing players, right? Okogie, just go stand in the corner and look for rebounds. That's pretty much what James Harden offenses are. The Wolves also have the obvious salary match for a deal in D'Angelo Russell, who would allow the Rockets to replace Harden's shot creation until whatever they're doing next happens. Adding 2019 lottery pick Jarrett Culver to D'Angelo Russell in the deal is enough salary to complete a trade, although the Wolves would almost certainly throw in Ed Davis to get below the luxury tax.
Can't throw in your heart and soul. On. Ed Davis is the heart and soul of this team. We've been told that.
That's Rybach. Wait a second.
No,
you want Ed Davis.
You've gone too far with this Ed Davis suggestion. He's not going anywhere.
Whoa, Ed Davis, pump the brakes.
This was all fun and games until you mentioned Ed Davis.
So is a Culver D'Angelo Russell package enough? Of course not, Hollinger says. Minnesota would also have to haggle with the Rockets over whether top pick Anthony Edwards would also be part of the deal, or whether the Rockets could settle, quote unquote, for unprotected first round picks in 2024 and 2026. All that might be too rich a price for a smaller market that has a decent chance of losing Harden for nothing after the 2022 in 2 seasons. Not to mention you might lose Towns in 2024. But if the Timberwolves really want to go all in on 2 years of a Towns-Harden partnership in their prime, they have a pretty clear avenue toward doing so.
Reckless speculation.
Trade talk.
Juicy rumors.
I'll add this. James Harden is 31 years old. He's under contract for 2 more seasons at $40 and $43 million, and then he has a player option. So you get him for 2 years, and he's a free agent. And he's one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. He's averaged 35 points a game the last couple of years. He's led the league in scoring 3 straight seasons. This will never happen. Like, he's not like, this is not going to happen.
Of course not.
I mean, it could, I guess.
It could happen.
D'Angelo Russell is going nowhere.
But
Cat would go crazy, and I don't blame him.
But would you guys, if this were you, if you were in these conversations on behalf of the Timberwolves, is this a discussion that you would entertain?
From a basketball standpoint, absolutely not. From a business standpoint, 1,000%.
Wow.
This would sell tickets. This would sell. If you tomorrow announce the Minnesota Timberwolves are calling a press conference regarding James Harden and his acquisition, you're a team that desperately needs to, from a business standpoint, okay? So forget Gerson, forget Ryan, forget anything to do with actual good fundamental decision-making when it comes to your basketball team. And let's pivot to, we're in a pandemic and your business is basically off the board. We don't know when fans are going to come back, but when they do, they're not really incentivized right now to buy tickets, and certainly season tickets, okay? If you announce tomorrow that you've acquired James Harden, guess what? You're probably not going to win more games, but you're going to get more fans. And so from a business standpoint, absolutely. Everything else, no, and no. But my God, I mean, you'd sell jerseys, you would get casual sports fan at least to buy into saying, I'll check that out. I don't know that casual sports fan is there right now, but I think a name like James Harden would get them there. And from a business standpoint, would help you.
Okay, well, I agree with you on like from a business standpoint.
Basketball makes no
ticket sales,
sense to me.
But hold on, why do you say that? Why do you say it doesn't make sense from a basketball
Because
perspective? James Harden he's one of the 5 best players in the league. He'd be the best player on this team, and Karl-Anthony Towns would get moved to the 2 position, the Robin position. That's probably more natural for him.
Because I don't think that they would ultimately win more games with him. I think that it'd be fun, and I think he'd score a ton. But keep in mind, too, everything that they've done in the past 2 years, basically, has been to make Cat as happy as possible, including obtaining his best friend, D'Angelo Russell, from Golden State. We're talking about now trading him. So I think that what this to me would be getting the baseball equivalent would be a guy that absolutely mashes and hits bombs, but isn't necessarily part of a team that wins, but it's sure fun to watch.
All right, I will preface everything I'm about to say with, I think they should keep going forward with what they're building and the D'Angelo Russell, Karl-Anthony Towns pairing. I'm curious to see more of it. We only saw like 5 seconds of it last year. Those guys seem to have a good friendship and chemistry, and I think there's potential for something there. They both have to get a lot better if we're talking about competing at the top half of the Western Conference playoff bracket. But James Harden right now is the finished product that you hope D'Angelo Russell can become like 80% of. If D'Angelo Russell can become 80% of what James Harden has been the last 5 years, it would be a huge win for the Wolves. And if you're talking about what gives you the best chance to win the most games in the next 2 years, kind of like they were doing in the front office in deciding 5 years ago when Tom Thibodeau took over, do we want to keep riding out this young nucleus and see what happens in like 2 or 3 years with Zach LaVine and Andrew Wiggins and Karl-Anthony Towns? Or do we just say, screw it, let's expedite the process and bring Jimmy Butler in here, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we all sort of nailed the end result there, which is they're going to be better in the short term, but they're going to have a glass ceiling on them that prevents them from getting what they really want, which is like long-term competitive, standing in the Western Conference.
Playoff
burst. It's going to flame out, and all those things happened.
Yep.
I think you would have 2 years, James Harden, Karl-Anthony Towns, and then whatever pieces remain around, some 3-and-D type, rotational pieces. I think you would have much better records this year and next year than you would with your current construction. But I think there's 0% chance James Harden at age 33 would be good enough to continue it on beyond 2 years and would even be willing to stick around in Minnesota beyond 2 years.
And Cat might leave as well.
So it would be 2 years of, all right, how much damage can you do with these two guys? High. And the answer is like, you're probably not going to be, I think the Mavericks are better. The Lakers are for sure better. The Clippers are weird because it seems like last year was their year and now they might, I don't know. There seems to be some weird chemistry there. The Nuggets are better. And you can make a case for a couple other teams that are sort of on the rise. I think immediately you would be a playoff team. And I think there's a chance you could even be like a 4, 5, or 6 seed with those two guys. But I don't think you're going to win a championship. But is there any guarantee that you're going to win a championship by just catering to Towns with D'Angelo Russell and
that's what I'm saying
building around him? Like, where has catering to Towns, as much as we love him, and I think he can be.
Dude,
I mean, like, where has catering to Towns gotten this organization so far? Just to play devil's advocate. I love Towns. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
You're going down a path of reckless speculation here that's incredibly dangerous, though, because you're not wrong.
Reckless speculation.
Listen, I love Towns, but like,
I will ask you a question off that. Because there's a chance the answer is yes. What if when it comes to Towns, they're just wrong? Like, they've done everything that they can to make him as happy as possible. They've gone out and acquired his friends. There's no question that the team is focused around him. He is the most important person in the building, and it's not a debate, okay? It's not a debate. What if they're wrong?
I think they're thinking about that too. Like, how much?
Because I mean, then you get into a reckless speculation territory that takes us a lot of places, including possibly Seattle.
So, because yeah, that's
Vegas.
Seattle's going to get a friend. I saw some people commenting on our YouTube channel yesterday, and they're 100% right. Like, if the Wolves don't get going here soon, Las Vegas, Seattle, like, they're looking for franchises. So it's time to go here.
They've got to be renamed, though. They've got to go back to the Supersonics.
Yeah. So, all right. I think Karl-Anthony Towns long-term is a wonderful number 2 to whoever the number 1 would be. I don't think he has the demeanor. I don't think he has the natural leadership skills. And I don't know if he has, like, I think he can play better defense, but I don't think he's a natural enough, fire in his belly defensive player to this point in his career to say that he's a number one on a championship team. There's a very select group over the past 10 or 15 years. I mean, I think KG had that capability, but they just could never find him a number two. It was just like Wally Zerbiak and Anthony Peeler were like his second best players for a couple of playoffs.
And they did try
They
too.
tried.
Yeah.
With Marbury, they definitely tried.
Yep. And that would have been fun to see play out. But if I'm right, and if Karl-Anthony Towns is a true number two and a great number two, he's the Pau Gasol to a Kobe, and you can win championships. Who's the number one? Is D'Angelo Russell the number one? I don't know. Could he turn into a number one? I don't know. Is Anthony Edwards the number one? That's going to take time to play out. James Harden could be the number one. I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay, but we thought Butler was too. The problem is that you have to pair.
Well, Butler would have been if they could have meshed, but
that's
here we are.
That's my point. Is the problem is that you have to pair Karl with somebody who, just as importantly as meshing, to use your word, on the court, meshes off the court. I think if you I got bad news.
You're starting to come around.
Yeah,
on
he is.
I got bad news for you. If you're right, and I'm not dismissing the fact that you might be right, Phil, I don't think it happens for Karl here. I don't think they find him. I don't think that they position themselves so strongly for Karl to be the one here that I don't know that you can bring in a one and knock Karl down to two in Minnesota and have that work. From his standpoint, from a perception standpoint, I think that if you are correct long term, and Karl is a really good two on a championship team, I don't see any way that it's with the Wolves because of what they've done to try and pacify him here.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can now go out and be like, you know what, that didn't work, Karl, after all of these years of you being the most important person in this building. Now here is player X, and you are the two, so go to it.
Okay, what if, let me give you one more scenario here, okay? One more scenario.
Reckless speculation.
What if you could make the trade with Houston and hang on to Anthony Edwards? Because the Timberwolves, through all their research, we had Gerson Rosas on the show last week. Go ahead, check it out. Apple, Spotify, ScoreNorth.com, Mackey Judd.
Good question.
It was Judd's good question that led to some of these answers.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, listen, I know you guys kind of think that this draft was a crapshoot because you're looking on the outside in. We literally had like 6 months and just an extraordinary, unprecedented amount of time because the draft was moved to November to do our homework. And we spent a ton of time around Anthony Edwards, and we think he's going to be a star. And he kind of laughed at the notion that, like, because I said, there's not really like a LeBron at the top of this draft. And he kind of laughed. He's like, I'm not trying to disrespect you, but we think that this dude's going to be a star because we put in our homework. If you could swing this trade and it was D'Lo, Culver, 2 first-round picks, maybe you throw in Ed Davis. It's going to be painful. I know. Maybe you throw in Ed Davis, right?
Why don't you just go ahead and throw in the heart and soul of the franchise?
Trade
Crunch too. Just send Crunch to Houston. I mean, you're trading the rest of the franchise.
Who's Houston's mascot?
What is it here?
I have to look it up.
Is it just a rocket?
Turbo?
It's Turbo the
you
Rocket.
know what his name is? Clutch. His name is Clutch.
No, he certainly was not in the playoffs.
What does it look like?
He was inducted to the Mascot Hall of Fame. He looks like a big teddy bear.
Okay, so that doesn't make any
Matt
sense.
Thomas.
Super weird.
It's Matt.
It's actually Matt Thomas underneath.
Matt Thomas
It's like a
is
mouse.
Clutch.
It's like a mouse or a bear. I can't tell what the hell this is.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Super
Mouse.
ambiguous.
Yes.
So anyway,
But let's
up?
say you could hang on to Anthony Edwards, and so you could sort of hedge against losing all of your future.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got your 31-year-old. I know that the Wolves are all about the timelines matching up with these players and like all of them peaking at the same time, and that would be great, and that's pie in the sky. But when James Harden becomes available, I think you start to rethink this. So it would be a little bit weird that you'd have a 31-year-old James Harden, a 25-year-old Karl-Anthony Towns, and a 19-year-old Anthony Edwards. But could James Harden and Karl-Anthony Towns, both in their prime, and then the pieces around them, could that be enough to become relevant near the top half of the Western Conference? And then in 2 years, if it blows up in your face, you still have Anthony Edwards under contract, a rookie contract, as maybe the future star of your franchise for the next however many years. Does that make you feel better if you can hang on to Anthony Edwards while completing this trade?
Not until I see what I have in him, and my My thing though is I'm much more curious about how this would be accepted, or the feelings about this trade from a locker room standpoint. I think that's the problem here. And it's why I go back to my point is, if you're right and Karl is a 2, I don't know that you can all of a sudden make him a 2 here. Like KG was never going to be the 2. You were always trying to find the 2, right? But we're talking about, in this conversation, literally taking Cat and being like, dude, you have been the 1, but you're really not the 1 now. We're demoting you to a 2 where you're going to be better off.
You think Towns has a problem with that?
I think that, yes, I think it would be a problem.
Do you think KG would have balked if it was like, hey man, I know that you're the 1, but Kobe's available?
Yes, I think he would have balked. Yes, I really do.
Because when he went to Boston, Paul Pierce was the alpha in Boston.
But he went elsewhere. That's my point.
I got you.
I think if you go elsewhere, the perception that then is you're going somewhere else and you are not the man. To use your term.
Or it's that guy's house and we're going to coexist as two alphas.
What I'm saying is, I don't think that you can have your franchise constantly try to do the best thing for you. We're going to get you this guy. Now we're going to get you that guy. Oh, now you're not the guy.
I hear you.
So I think if Cat went to the Lakers, or if he went to Boston or elsewhere, the transformation that you're talking about is pretty seamless. And I think Karl accepts it. I don't know that he could accept it here.
All right, Dex, sounds like you're going to, all right. I at first I was playing devil's advocate. Now I'm like, you know what? If it's D'Lo, Culver, 2 first-round picks, and Ed Davis, and I can hang on to Anthony Edwards, which is a trade that I'm just completely making up off of the John Hollinger article. Yeah. But it sounds right. Like the salaries match. You're getting a good young player in D'Angelo. You're getting 2 first-round picks, another decent young player in Culver. Like, for a guy that's literally not showing up to practice and just doesn't want to be there anymore, you're in rebuild mode. I would now strongly consider making that trade. So you're the tiebreaker now, Dex. Would you trade these pieces, mortgage some of your future potentially for 2 years and nothing guaranteed after that of James Harden, Karl-Anthony Towns?
I think it'd be disastrous for Karl-Anthony Towns. And Towns is already teetering on this being a disastrous situation. I want to keep him happy. I think D'Angelo Russell was that piece to do so. However, if you're asking me what gives the Timberwolves a better chance to win an NBA championship in the next 2 years, is it with Towns and D'Lo, or is it with Towns and James Harden? It's with Towns and James Harden, by far. Here's
the other thing about, because you're also on the walk around eggshells around Towns, like don't want to make him unhappy. And again, I love Karl-Anthony Towns. I think he's an exceptional basketball player. I think he's one of the most uniquely talented and efficient offensive 7-footers we've ever seen in the history of the NBA. But this whole we're going into year 6 and we got to make sure that Towns is happy. They've done nothing.
Right, but they've done
nothing with Towns. Jimmy Butler was the reason.
But that's their fault.
Yeah. Right, but they're
making it worse.
Does he need to be walked on eggshells around, or should it just be, listen, man, we're looking to bring talented players in here, and if some people can deal with it and some people can't. Hopefully, you can deal with it.
If this were the Lakers or the Heat, the answer to your question is absolutely not. It's the Timberwolves.
Yep.
Your greatest fear is that he's going to come to you and say, "I'm done here."
But what are you losing if that happens? Besides the franchise to Seattle,
possibly your job.
But they're not like a playoff team right now.
I know, but they're going to be sold. And if your best player asks out, that's a reflection on you.
Yep.
And plus, you have bent over backwards for how long now? So from the day that Gerson got this job, right? He has bent over backwards to be like, Karl, it's your team, Karl. And now you're going to pivot and be like, yeah, it's really not.
Is it a pivot, though? Is it a pivot
yes,
if you're bringing in one of the 5 best players in the NBA? Don't do mental gymnastics here. You're bringing in one of the 5 best players in the NBA. But you're trading
one of his best friends. You're trading one of Karl's best friends. So, yes, it's a pivot. Hey,
figure it out.
Fundamentally, I'm with you.
And by the way, if you can't figure it out, then you're not the player that we wanted to build around anyways. If you can't handle bringing in a top 5 NBA player, if that throws you off, then that's set. Then now at least we've learned.
But who always fails, Phil? The Timberwolves. This would be another
until they get James Harden.
Kevin Love out. Garnett, you traded. He didn't want out.
Yeah, but Kevin Love, as it turned out, he was not a franchise leading player. He was a number 3 on a championship team.
Agreed. But
he was along for the ride.
But what did you do again with Love? You at one point in time. I mean, Flip took Love out to eat how many times? Dinner, breakfast, please. So the problem is the perception, right or wrong, always comes back to the Timberwolves failed again.
There's also another thing we haven't talked about here, which is James Harden has his own problems, like in the playoffs and being a franchise leading player. He's had multiple chances to be that guy, and he's never been good enough on defense. He's had some big games where he's clanked shots, for 2 hours.
He is the type of guy in baseball who comes in and mashes, and it's fun, but he ultimately really doesn't win.
Well, he does win though. Like they win a ton of regular season games, and they've been to the Western Conference.
No, but I mean, he ultimately, if your goal is how do I put together a championship team? Harden's not that guy.
I disagree.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. In the Warriors era, you're right. But in the Warriors era, no other player is a championship player.
Sure.
Except LeBron once when he hulked up and came back from down 3-1.
But is the Western Conference getting worse?
The Western Conference is evolving. I don't think the Warriors now, especially without Clay, there's not a dynasty team at the top of it, but there's like 10 really solid teams, and the Wolves aren't one of those 10, and you need to get into that 10. Like you need to be doing what Dallas is doing and doing what the Nuggets did last year, like be in that mix.
Yep.
Because I don't think they're in. You could say, well, aren't the Lakers kind of a dynasty level team? Yeah, but LeBron's like 35 now. At some point,
there is no question. Your blueprint as the Wolves is Denver.
Yeah.
Like that's your blueprint.
But like, imagine if Denver added James Harden.
Right.
Like he's a huge difference maker. In the Warriors dynasty era, was he good enough to carry a team like LeBron did to knock them off? No.
Right.
But outside the Warriors dynasty era, there's going to be a bunch of teams like the Heat almost won the championship last year, kind of out of nowhere. I feel like we're entering an era where almost anything can happen the next like 3 to 5 years in the NBA as we transition to whoever the next dynasty is.
Mm-hmm.
The Spurs are sort of in rebuild mode, right? And Greg Popovich is getting old. So can you put yourself in that conversation before the next dynasty takes place?
I think you could make yourself a lot more fun. I don't know that you could put yourself in the conversation to win a championship with that trade.
Reckless speculation.
It'd be fun though.
I didn't think we were going to do 30 minutes on that.
Yeah,
it'd be fun to cover.
But it would be so much fun.
Butler was too.
God.
I mean, but Butler was a mess, but fun.
Also, can you imagine how sad Wisconsin sports fans would be? Because now that Milwaukee's on that list, if the Wolves swooped in, that's just irrelevant for like 15 years out of nowhere.
So how good are the Bucks right now, do you think?
I think the Bucks are like a James Harden away from maybe winning a championship. Like if you replace Chris Middleton with James Harden, you can win a championship.
I'd love to see them win a championship. I think the Bucks would be fun.
Now, no matter what team he joins, the biggest elephant in the room problem for James Harden teams is like the whole system and team revolve around him just like dribbling the air out of the ball for a half hour and taking step back threes.
Yeah.
So, how would him and Giannis have to work together? Now, at least you would have a guy who can hit threes from outside, and Giannis can operate. Giannis is not the greatest shooter. He can operate from like 20 feet and in. But there would be some major chemistry issues for at least the first half of the season with anyone that gets James Harden this late in the game because you don't get the offseason to work out. But we'll see what happens. Well, that was great.
Wow. Reckless speculation. That was extremely reckless, by the way.
Gonna need a smoke after that.
Well, Marlboro Red.
I've never had a cigarette. So I don't even know like
Marlboro Red. Oh my God. Oh yeah.
I had a couple drinks and it's pre-pandemic outside the Loon Cafe. A Marlboro Red.
You're sitting out there with your sunglasses on at night.
That's strong, right, Dex?
It is a tough cigarette. Yeah.
I was going to say that's not for the faint of heart.
No.
I can see Dex in like his rolled up like 1950s jeans and a flannel just up against the brick wall.
Shirt with a cigarette pack right in the sleeve thing, right?
You're a jet out of the way. That's kind of how it works.